Hi all, this is your Professor Ian. This is a video where I talk you through essay number 4. So here I am in the modules page of the website, Canvas site. I've created a module just for essay number 4 with all the different parts. So let's talk about this briefly. Very similar work structure to every other essay. We have a peer editing session we'll do the last week of the course, week 18. There's a proposal, due the week before, letter to the reader, due with the final draft on, I think, the 20th, the very last day available is due. You can turn in before then, remember, but it's due then. Same as the other ones, cumulative reflection on what we've been doing, or the feedback you've gotten on papers, and then how you've dealt with that in this paper. This paper, we're also going to be doing conferences in week 17, so check out those instructions. It's just a first come, first serve, very quick conference that we'll have one-on-one through Cranium Cafe or Zoom. You can let me know if you want to use Zoom instead, if that works better for your device. Just a very quick conference, work 2 points. It'll just take 5 minutes just to make sure you're on the right track, give you any advice you need. So those are all the same for the most part. Conference is new. There's also a new thing, the Central Text Study Guide, which let's talk about that right now. So this is a project where you're going to put together the research that you found for your paper using that program Wakelet, which you are going to be using in week 14 for your music video analysis project, and in week 15 and 16 for your group project. So you're going to be familiar with Wakelet by the time you get to this. Basically, you're just going to put together all the documents you use for your fourth paper in a Wakelet project. And the idea behind this is I used to assign something called an annotated bibliography, which is where you would put together all your research sources in a text format, like a text, a Word document. You'd list each source using MLA and then a brief summary of that source. And this is a research tool that people still use to share research with each other, but I think Wakelet, it makes a more fun way of doing an annotated bibliography. So this is basically an annotated bibliography. I'm just calling it a study guide. And you're going to share it in the discussion forum, right? You're going to see each other's Wakelet projects devoted to your last paper. You're going to comment on each other's, read it, give some feedback. So for this study guide, what you need to do is you need to, again, present your research sources. You need to give a brief summary and explanation of why you posted this item, why you're using certain sources in your final paper, and a full MLA entry, right? So it is like an annotated bibliography. You're just presenting it in a different way. Also, I want you to play around with infographics. Think about that. And I've got a breakdown of the things I want to see, not just your research, but I want you to, again, this final project, I'm asking you to imagine yourself teaching a section of English 1B, and I want you to present different things that you would maybe use as a teacher. So things like quizzes, discussion questions, close reading of a scene, say you're focusing on a movie or something as an example of a certain kind of rhetoric, right? Maybe a sports movie. Rocky, let's say, for example, as an example of sports rhetoric. And so you're breaking down that movie as your kind of central text. So you might have a close reading of a specific scene, discussion questions about the movie, any other activities you could think about using in class, things like that, as well as the related readings. So this is the kind of research you're going to use in your final paper, right? At least one infographic, title page, summary of your central text itself. So anyways, this is just meant to help you. Part of what we're doing here is this is meant to help you organize the sources and the ideas that you're working on in the final paper. This is due the week before the final paper. So this gives you a chance to put together your ideas in a different way, in a less kind of formal and structured way, in a sense, in a less text-based way, let you think about your ideas in this way, get some feedback, and then work on your final paper. So please look over the instructions for that. Ask me any questions you want. I know this is probably a new task, unless you took me for English 1A and I gave you a very similar assignment at the end of the semester. Oh, so let's go back up to the actual instructions for the paper itself. So I'm calling this You're the Prof research paper. So again, I'm asking you to imagine that you are teaching a section of English 1B, a section of English 1B. You're the prof. You've been hired to teach this course. You need to find a theme. So when I taught this course this semester, I used the theme of conspiracy theories. In previous semesters, I've focused on things like moral choices, moral and ethical choices, especially like, and I focused one semester on bioethics. I focused on apocalyptic rhetoric, and now I'm focusing on the conspiracy theories. I focused on other things as well, but that's the last few years. And when I teach this course, I teach the first section is pretty much the same, where we talk about classic rhetoric. Second section changes a bit. Third section is very different because we're focusing on a very specific kind of rhetoric as a case study, right? And that's what I want you to imagine too. So you've been hired to teach this course. You need to find a new theme. So I have some examples here of different kinds of rhetoric. So different kinds of specific persuasive language that we use. We could think of, patriotic rhetoric, right? People, when they talk about patriotism and the flag and stuff, they have a certain ways of speaking and trying to persuade people. Apocalyptic, so using the apocalypse and the threat of the end of the world in your rhetoric. It's very popular in politics. Sports related, I keep coming back to that. So like sports and self-improvement rhetoric is very interesting. I have an anti-vaxxer here, but that's getting into conspiracy theories. You could do that if you want. And anyway, so you're teaching this course. You need to find a new theme for it. What kind of rhetoric do you want to focus on? Once you kind of decide on what kind of rhetoric, you need to find a central text, right? One text or one movie, one work that you're going to focus on for this paper, right? In this course, I used a whole bunch of different essays, but in previous semesters, such as the last few semesters I taught apocalyptic rhetoric. I changed just because of the COVID-19 thing. I didn't want to focus on the end of the world when we're going through a global pandemic. It seemed kind of on the nose. So in previous semesters, though, I focused on apocalyptic rhetoric, and I would use a text such as The Road, which is a post-apocalyptic novel, or I could use, I think we talked about Wall-E too, because it's kind of post-apocalyptic. Anyways, what I want you to do is focus on a text such as that. So you wanted to focus on fairy tale rhetoric, let's say, just say it like that, give that as an example. You could choose Disney's Snow White, and you could focus on that kind of fairy tale rhetoric that Disney used to really use a lot. So anyways, that's what the paper is basically asking you to do. Choose a new theme for our section of English 1B. Imagine you're teaching this course. Find a new theme and find one central text that you can focus on, right? And then work on it from there. So if you're using that as your central text in the course, how would you build a course around that? What supporting text would you use? Because you need to find other essays to read, other essays for your students to use so they can help decipher this rhetoric, say fairy tale rhetoric again. So you'd find articles about fairy tales and the history of fairy tales and the positives of fairy tales and negatives of fairy tales, things like that, right? I've got a breakdown of the sections that I want you to use. I think I've given you a pretty good, specific breakdown. So please go through that. Specific research sources, much like essay number 3. I want you to use specific Chafee resources. So please go back to that talk from the librarian if you need reminder, or just, it's a great guide for finding specific things from like databases and credible websites and such. Then there's some tips here. This is a formal research paper, so avoiding the first and second person, stay in the third person, MLA, formatting, using good research, not just slotting it in, but actually discussing and analyzing it. Anyways, I'll let you go through that. If you have any questions or concerns, please do email or come on my office hours. And remember, you could do this. It's the longest paper of the semester, but hopefully fun because you get to choose your own topic and do what you're interested in. So anyways, if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out. Otherwise, have fun with it.